In the vast expanse of the South China Sea, a seemingly insignificant cluster of rocks, known as Huangyan Island to China and Scarborough Shoal to the Philippines, has become the center of a major international flashpoint. Despite its small size, this remote outcrop has captured the attention of nations far beyond its waters. Both countries lay claim to this shoal, not for its barren land, but for what it represents: national pride, access to valuable economic resources, and crucial strategic control over vital sea lanes. The stakes are high and the emotions run even higher. Recent warnings and assertive moves from China have reignited old tensions, drawing renewed global attention and concern from neighboring countries and international observers alike. The South China Sea is riddled with overlapping claims from multiple nations, but Huangyan Island stands out as a particularly sensitive and volatile hotspot, where the interests of powerful players collide. Control over the shoal means more than just territory. It grants access to some of the richest fishing grounds in the region, and the possibility of tapping into vast, untapped oil and gas reserves beneath the sea. For China, the claim is deeply rooted in centuries-old history and ancient maps. For the Philippines, it's about proximity, livelihood, and the backing of international law, including a 2016 tribunal ruling in its favor. Both sides are deeply entrenched, with military and Coast Guard vessels frequently facing off in tense standoffs, making any form of compromise seem elusive and distant. The shoal's significance far outweighs its physical size, symbolizing the broader struggle for influence, resources, and power in the region, a high-stakes chess game played on the open sea. As we explore this ongoing dispute, we'll examine the unique geography of the shoal, the tangled history behind the claims, and the latest confrontations that keep the world watching. Understanding this conflict means understanding why a few isolated rocks can shake not just the region, but potentially the entire world order, as global powers weigh in. The story of Huangyan Island is a powerful lesson in how even the smallest places can have an outsized impact on global geopolitics, shaping the destinies of nations. So, let's dive deeper into why this tiny spot in the ocean matters so much, and what its future could mean for the world. Huangyan Island, also known internationally as Scarborough Shoal, is a small but highly significant feature in the South China Sea. It sits about 124 nautical miles west of Luzon, the Philippines' largest and most populous island. This close proximity to the Philippine mainland is not just a matter of geography, it's a key factor in the ongoing dispute over who truly owns and controls the shoal. For generations, Filipino fishermen have depended on these rich waters for their livelihoods, venturing out in small boats to harvest fish and other seafood. The shoal's nearness to Luzon has made it an essential part of local coastal communities' daily lives, shaping traditions and sustaining families for decades. Scarborough Shoal itself is a striking triangular atoll, covering about 150 square kilometers. At its heart lies a large, sheltered lagoon teeming with marine life, surrounded by coral reefs that provide both habitat and protection for countless species. This unique geography makes the shoal not only a navigational landmark, but also an ecological treasure. In contrast, for China, the shoal is much farther away, over 500 nautical miles from Hainan Island, its southernmost province. This vast distance raises important questions about the legitimacy of China's claim, if based solely on proximity. However, China's argument is rooted in history rather than geography. Chinese officials point to ancient maps and records, asserting that their fishermen and sailors have visited and named the shoal for centuries, long before modern borders were drawn. The shoal is just one part of a region riddled with overlapping claims from Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, Taiwan, China, and the Philippines. Each nation brings its own historical documents, legal arguments, and strategic interests to the table, making the South China Sea one of the world's most complex maritime disputes. Strategically, Huangyan Island commands vital shipping lanes through which a significant portion of East Asia's trade and energy supplies flow. Control over the shoal means influence over these crucial maritime routes, which are the lifeblood of regional economies. Military presence here is not just symbolic. Whoever controls the shoal can monitor and potentially disrupt maritime traffic, giving the area military value far beyond its modest size. This makes it a flashpoint for regional security concerns. Both Beijing and Manila, along with Washington and other interested parties, keep a close watch on every development at the shoal. diplomatic tensions can flare up quickly, drawing international attention to even minor incidents. Economically, the lagoon is a rich fishing ground, supporting thousands of livelihoods. Beyond fishing, the surrounding seabed is believed to hold untapped oil and gas reserves, making the shoal even more valuable in a world hungry for energy resources. Securing the shoal means exclusive rights to these resources under international law, a powerful incentive for both nations to assert their claims and defend their interests. The stakes are high. Whoever controls Huangyan Island holds a key piece of the South China Sea puzzle, with implications for regional power, economic opportunity, and national pride. This is why the dispute is about much more than just rocks in the water. It's about sovereignty, security, and the future of the region. The shoal's location and resources make it both a strategic and economic prize, coveted by all who border the South China Sea. That's why tensions here never truly disappear. As long as the stakes remain high, Huangyan Island will continue to be a focal point of rivalry and negotiation in the South China Sea. China's claim to Huangyan Island is anchored in a narrative of ancient discovery and use. Beijing cites old maps and texts, arguing Chinese sailors and fishermen have visited the shoal for centuries. The 9-dash line on Chinese maps, first published in the 1940s, encloses most of the South China Sea, including Huangyan Island. For China, this line is a formal declaration of historic rights and national identity. Any challenge to it is seen as a threat to China's sovereignty. However, many outside China dispute these claims, arguing that historical visits don't equal legal ownership. In 2016, an international tribunal ruled China's historic rights had no legal basis, a decision Beijing rejected outright. The historical argument remains fiercely contested, fueling the ongoing standoff. The Philippines bases its claim on geography and international law, specifically the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. Scarborough Shoal lies well within the Philippines' 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. Filipino fishermen have long used the shoal, reinforcing Manila's claim. In 2016, an international tribunal sided with the Philippines on key points, ruling China had violated its rights within the EEZ. The tribunal didn't decide who owns the shoal, but it did affirm the Philippines' right to fish and explore for resources there. Manila uses this legal victory to justify its patrols and rally international support. The dispute is framed as a defense of international law against a larger power. The dispute over Huangyan Island, also known as Scarborough Shoal, has erupted repeatedly over the years, with tensions simmering beneath the surface. The most significant flare-up occurred in 2012, but the roots of the conflict stretch back decades, shaped by competing territorial claims and national pride. In 2012, a dramatic standoff began when the Philippine Navy confronted a group of Chinese fishing boats at the shoal, suspecting them of illegal activities. This encounter quickly escalated, drawing in larger forces from both sides. Chinese maritime surveillance and Coast Guard ships intervened, leading to weeks of tense face-offs at sea. Both sides refused to back down, and the world watched anxiously as the situation threatened to spiral out of control. The United States stepped in to broker a deal for mutual withdrawal, hoping to defuse the crisis. However, only the Philippines complied with the agreement. China maintained its presence at the shoal, effectively taking control. Since then, China has effectively controlled access to Scarborough Shoal, often blocking Filipino fishermen from their traditional fishing grounds. This has had a profound impact on local livelihoods and regional stability. The 2012 standoff marked a turning point, demonstrating China's willingness to assert its territorial claims with maritime power and a show of force. The balance of power in the South China Sea began to shift. In response, the Philippines pursued legal action at The Hague, seeking international arbitration. Meanwhile, China consolidated its control on the water, building up its presence and infrastructure. Filipino fishermen suffered economically, losing access to vital fishing grounds. Their frustration and resentment grew as their way of life was disrupted and their future became uncertain. Under President Duterte, Manila shifted its approach, seeking warmer ties with Beijing. The government downplayed the dispute in exchange for limited fishing access and promises of economic cooperation. This uneasy calm depended on political goodwill and shifting alliances, not on a genuine or lasting solution. The underlying issues remained unresolved, and the peace was always fragile. The core sovereignty issue continued to simmer, with protests in Manila and diplomatic tensions never far from the surface. Both nations remained wary, knowing that tensions could flare up at any moment. Each new incident, no matter how small, risks reigniting the conflict, drawing in regional and even global powers, and threatening the fragile peace. The standoff is far from over. For the people who depend on these waters, and for the nations that claim them, the uncertainty and tension remain a daily reality. The recent calm at Huangyan Island has ended. On November 5, 2025, Beijing issued a sharp warning to the Philippines, demanding it halt provocative actions and remove a grounded ship from nearby Huangyan Shoal. China accused Manila of infringing on its sovereignty and threatened resolute measures. This warning followed increased Philippine patrols and public exposure of Chinese actions, including the removal of a Chinese barrier at the shoal's entrance. President Marcos Jr. has taken a tougher stance, reaffirming the 2016 tribunal ruling and strengthening ties with the U.S. China sees these moves as a direct challenge, especially with expanded U.S. military cooperation. Beijing's warning is aimed at both Manila and Washington, signaling it won't tolerate challenges to its claims. The risk of confrontation is rising. The Philippines insists its actions are a legitimate defense of its sovereign rights under international law. Increased Coast Guard patrols are meant to protect Filipino fishermen and assert control over its exclusive economic zone. Removing the Chinese barrier was celebrated domestically as a stand for national dignity. The economic impact on local communities drives Manila's resolve. There's deep concern that China could militarize the shoal, as it has elsewhere in the South China Sea. To counter China's power, the Philippines has strengthened its alliance with the U.S., securing security assurances. Any conflict here could quickly draw in outside powers. The standoff at Huangyan Island reverberates across Southeast Asia and beyond. Other claimants like Vietnam and Malaysia watch closely, wary of China's next move. ASEAN struggles to present a united front, hampered by internal divisions and economic ties to China. The South China Sea is a vital artery for global trade. Any conflict could disrupt trillions in commerce. Countries like Japan, Australia, and the U.S. have a stake in keeping these waters open and peaceful. The U.S. regularly conducts freedom of navigation operations, challenging China's claims and adding military tension. China sees these actions as provocations, further complicating the situation. The world is watching, aware that a misstep here could have global consequences. The future of Huangyan Island is uncertain, with both China and the Philippines refusing to back down. China's control since 2012 is unlikely to change, while Manila, buoyed by legal victories and U.S. support, remains defiant. The most likely scenario is continued gray zone, conflict, coercion, and confrontation short of war. The danger lies in miscalculation. A single incident could escalate rapidly, drawing in other powers. A peaceful resolution would require a major shift in attitudes or creative compromise, such as joint resource management. For now, deep mistrust makes cooperation unlikely. Huangyan Island remains a tiny flashpoint with the power to shape the future of Asia and the world.